Welcome back to the shop. This video is going to be all about buying a used bike, what to look for, how to judge the hours, the do's and don'ts when you're buying the used bike, and we're also going to be discussing things like certificate of origin versus titles versus a bill of sale, as well as at the end of the video, stick around because I'm going to be rolling several bikes into this shop. We're going to look over the bike and then we're going to try to guess the hours on it. Some of these bikes I know the hours. We're going to see if we can guess it right. Some of these bikes I don't. We're just going to have to guess them. So stick around for that. And we will be covering both 2-strokes and 4-strokes. It's a little more critical to know the hours on a 4-stroke, but we'll discuss that a little bit more as we go along in the video. As you probably already know, I ride myself. I am a motorcycle mechanic. Been riding my whole life. In my life, I've probably bought over 500 used bikes, maybe even closer to 1,000. Not only for personal use, but also to fix up and resell, or to part out, or just to even resell. So I have a lot of experience in buying used bikes. It's very important to be familiar with what you are buying. Know that bike, right? Know how it sounds and what to look for on that bike. If it's a, let's say you're buying a CRF 450. Well, some of the older CRF 450s were pretty chuggy sounding, like the 2006. At idle, they make a tucka 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 tucka. And I often get phone calls from people that bought these bikes used. They call me up. They say it's making a chugging sound. They bring it by for me to listen to it. I'm like, nope, that's just how they sound. They've always sounded like that. So it's real important to be familiar with the bike you are buying. If you don't know how that bike is supposed to sound, maybe find a friend that has one. Go to the track, find someone that has one. Go by a dealership and ask for one to be started up. Maybe one of the used ones they have in the lot to be started up so you can listen to it and get an idea how that bike is supposed to sound. Even for a 2-stroke, the YZ250 definitely has its own inherent sounds that are perfectly normal. But they make them sounds, you know, they kind of make a stator sound close to idle. They make all kinds of little noises and sounds that are perfectly normal. They do it from brand new. But the idea is to know how it's supposed to sound so that you're not mistaken between what is a critical sound, something actually about to fail, versus just a normal sound that they make. The closer the bike is to stock, the better off you're going to be. I promise you that. People buy bikes all the time and bring them to me. And they just bought the bike. They brag about how the suspension was redone by so-and-so. And the motor has this work done to it. And it has all these fancy parts on it. And through the life of that bike, as I am the mechanic for that bike gives us more problems and more trouble than the bikes that people buy used that are bone stock. A bone stock is going to be a better bike to start with. And it's not because of the parts that people add on the bike, because I can add all these parts and I can do all this suspension work and I'll do a good job and stuff's going to hold up and it's going to do well. It's more about the mechanic that did the job or who did the job. Sometimes it's even the owner that has done the job. They strip out bolts inside the suspension. When I take the suspension apart, a lot of times, or often, when it's been revalved, I have seen stuff come loose. They didn't use Loctite on the shim stack, the bolt that holds the shim stack on, and all that junk comes loose, and it's just nasty. It just, yeah, just the closer to stock it is, the better off you're going to be. I mean, I'm not so concerned about exhaust system being added on, or decals, or stuff like this being put on, frame guards, that kind of stuff, that handlebars, levers, grips, whatever. That stuff is, you know, most people do that to their used bike anyway, but that stuff's not so much of a big deal. I'm more concerned about if they had to go into the motor. Not every mechanic is a good mechanic, and I rebuild motors all the time, and I go to take it apart, and I see the previous mechanic made a critical error here or there or wherever. So it's better to get a motor that's never been taken apart, besides maybe a top-end job, maybe, you know, but preferably not. But it's better to get a bike that's never been taken apart in the motor area and also the suspension area. When the suspension's been revalved, well, you don't know how it's been revalved or who revalved it. Did they get the formula right? The bikes these days come with very good suspension valving, and it is a little bit difficult to improve on that. So, you know, just because it's been revalved doesn't mean it's going to be better than the stock valving. Springs, you know, if they say, well, I didn't revalve it, but I put new springs on it. Do they have the original springs? Because they, you know, sometimes they'll spring them too stiff, too soft. Just, it's better to get a bike that's stock. That's all I'm trying to say. As far as judging the hours from a visual perspective, not so much by looking at an hour meter or hooking up your phone to the Yamahas and new Yamahas that have the hours on the ECU, but from looking at it from a visual, it's easier to tell or to guess the hours of a bike the younger the bike is. It's pretty easy to see if a bike is under 20-25 hours. As you get around the 50-hour mark, it starts to get a little bit more difficult to figure out the hours. Once you get to 100 hours, well, you're kind of in no man's land once you pass the 100-hour mark. A bike may have 100 hours on it, it could have 300 hours on it, and they could look totally the same, just depending on the rider. So the younger the bike is, the easier it is to be pretty confident that you're guessing the hours pretty accurately. And so because of that, the younger the bike, the better, especially with the 4-strokes. The new Yamahas, or the newer Yamahas, you can just connect your phone to it, Wi-Fi, and the ECU, and read the hours. However, just like in the street bike world where people used to swap out speedo clusters to lower the miles on the bike, you know, someone can just easily swap out a ECU on these new Yamahas, maybe even just buy a brand new ECU or get one on eBay that has lower hours than their current bike. So it is nice to check it, and I do check the ECU to see the hours, but I want to make sure the ECU hours kind of visually match the hours of the bike, how it looks, what I'm guessing it is. And so you can't go strictly by what the ECU reads because, you know, someone might have changed it out. Same with the KTMs. A lot of the KTMs will come with the hour meter from brand new right here. And again, someone can switch it out. Someone can even just disconnect it while they ride the bike just so the hours don't rack up. So it's real important to be able to look at the bike. That's what I'm trying to say. Look at it yourself and be able to figure it out and guess the hours yourself. On a 4-stroke, in my opinion, for a track bike, it's real critical to buy them definitely under 100 hours, preferably under 50 hours, best under 20-25 hours. And here's why I say that. For a track bike on a 4-stroke at the 200-hour mark, to keep the bike safe, you're going to want to have a new crankshaft, new valves, new valve springs, a lot of new stuff, maybe even a new oil pump. Everything, there's going to be a lot of stuff you have to replace at 200 hours to keep it as a safe bike. Now, a track bike, meaning it's going to be going after big jumps. If you're using it for trails and play riding, it's perfectly fine running it over 200 hours with whatever you got. But for a track bike at 200 hours, you're going to have a big bill. And who wants to pay that big bill, right? I don't. So I'd rather get a bike at low hours, especially, you know, 4-stroke, get it at low hours so that I don't have to worry about that big bill. And I can sell the bike probably at about 150 hours or so, and to someone that's just going to be using it in the trails, and it'll be fine. On a 2-stroke, it's not quite as critical. The parts don't really have an hour lifespan for a track bike like a 4-stroke would. So it's not as critical. You know, we can just judge the cylinder by wear. We can judge the crank by wear when it looks worn or starting to show wear. You know, we can change it out. But, you know, that's where 4-strokes are a little bit different. Some of these parts will show no wear, however, they met their lifespan. A valve might look perfectly fine, but if it's at 200 hours and it's a track bike, it needs to go. A valve spring might look perfectly fine, but if it's a track bike and it has 200 hours, it needs to go. And even the crank, the rod can break at some point after 200 hours on a track bike, out of nowhere. So it's pretty important on a 4-stroke if you're going to buy a used one to get it low hours so you don't have to worry about that big bill at 200 hours coming up anytime soon. If you buy one at 150 hours, oh, well, yeah. But hey, I mean, someone has to buy that 150, 200 hour 4-stroke, right? Someone needs to. And they have their place in the trails and play riding. In my opinion, they just don't have their place on the track anymore after 200 hours, not for safety reasons, unless it has been thoroughly gone through and lots of parts changed inside that motor. In the past bikes I have sold, I often have potential buyers get a hold of me and say, hey, is it okay if I bring my compression tester? I want to check the compression on the bike. I'm going to say, don't be that guy when you're buying a bike. Don't break out the compression tester. Don't even ask. It's useless. On a 2-stroke, to judge the compression, well, again, be familiar with the bike. It's pretty easy just to feel the kicker. Like, I can tell this 125 right here has pretty good compression. Obviously, a 250 2-stroke is going to be a lot stiffer. It has 2 rings and it's a bigger motor. It's going to have a lot stiffer kickstart lever when you push it down. The 85s can be pretty soft, but you'll feel pulses as you push the kicker lever down. Again, be familiar with the bike you're buying. And that's how you're going to judge the compression on a 2-stroke. On a 4-stroke, well, these modern day 4-strokes have what they call auto decompressions on the exhaust camshaft. That bleeds off compression during the startup phase. So it's hard to get a good compression reading. You're not going to see 150 psi, 200 psi when doing a compression test. You're going to see like maybe 110. Anything over 90 starts, and that's how it is. You know, the auto decompression is bleeding off compression. So hooking a compression tester on it, it's just going to tell you that it has enough compression to start up. That's all it's going to tell you. Why do that when all you have to do is hit a button and start it up? Did it start up? Yeah, it did. Okay, so we got enough compression. That's pretty much it with the 4-stroke. And on the 4-strokes that are not electric start, the ones that are kicker, instead of using your hand to feel the compression, it's easier to use your foot, because they're pretty hard to, even with, I've had them with no compression and they still feel like they have compression at the kicker because you're opening and closing valves. But the foot doesn't seem to lie to me. So be familiar with how that bike's supposed to feel at the kicker lever when you kick it, and get on top of it and give it some kicks. How does it feel? Does it feel a little bit soft, or is it pretty stout? A few red flags for me on the 4-strokes: valve adjustments. If the seller tells me that the valves were adjusted, let's say the bike has 50 hours on it, or he's saying it has 50 hours on it, and it looks like a 50-hour bike. He says he had the valves adjusted. I'm going to ask, why did they need to be adjusted? Was it just a routine check and you found them a little bit out and you had to correct that, or were they out to the point the bike wasn't starting? Hopefully he's honest. If he says they were out to the point the bike wasn't starting, well, just know if you do choose to buy that bike, you're going to need to put new valves in it. Anytime the valves wear to the point that they get out of adjustment to the point the bike does not start, them valves are pretty bad shape. They let dirt get in the motor is what happened. So just know you're going to have to pull the cylinder head off and put new valves. Now, if they said it was just a routine check and they found one ever so slightly out, just ever so slightly, and just corrected that, well, that's going to be okay. Another red flag is if they say fully rebuilt motor. We just had a new crankshaft put in it. The bike's at 100 hours, 80 hours. Holy cow, you already had to put a new crankshaft in it? I'm just not going to buy that bike. Not a 4-stroke. I mean, sure, it sounds nice. Well, it's got a brand new crankshaft. That's a brand new motor. But again, someone did that work. A mechanic got in there. You don't know if they did everything right. You don't know if they cut corners. You don't know if they did a cheap rebuild just to get it up and running again to sell it. You just don't know at that point. Whereas when you buy a stock motor, a stock bike, at 75 hours, let's say, that no one's ever been in that motor, at least you know what you're getting. You're getting a bike from the assembly plant in Japan that only has 75 hours on it. You know all the bolts in there are properly Loctited in, torqued down properly. You know what parts are inside that motor. Excuse me, I meant thread locker. It's good to be able to look over the bike and be able to judge the hours looking at the hardware of the bike, because I have actually seen people buy bikes brand new, take all the stock plastic off it, take the stock cover off it, take this stock cover off it. I've even seen them take the wheels off of it, the rims, and the exhaust system, and put on some aftermarket stuff, ride the bike for about 75 hours, then put all the stock plastic back on, the stock covers back on, the stock wheels, the stock chain and sprocket, and everything, and sell it as an extremely low hour bike. So there are people, just like people change out the ECUs to get to read lower hours, people also swap out all the parts and then put the OEM parts back on. So that's why it's real important to be able to look over the whole bike and be able to judge the hours. In my entire life, I have only bought 3 brand new bikes from a dealership: a 2006 YZ250, a 2006 YZ125, and a 2006 TTR 125. And ever since I bought them 3 bikes brand new, I kind of realized you pay so much for them out the door, and then if you ride it just 5 hours to 10 hours, you got to sell them for a couple thousand cheaper. So I've kind of learned to buy these bikes off people that have only put 5, 10, 15 hours on them. Because I get them for, you know, quite a few $1,000s cheaper, and it's still basically a new bike as long as I can look it over and make sure it hasn't been molested or anything. It's a good bike. It's a great bike. I'll save a lot of money because I'm just going to wear it out anyway. So let me show you some examples of some of the bikes I have brought home throughout the years. Here you go. Okay, start with my 2018 YZ250. This is how it looked when I bought it. You can see you already put a pro circuit pipe and silencer on it, but otherwise it was a good clean stock bike. It had the original back tires and front tires. There was a rear fender. He claimed it had 18 hours on it at the time. I honestly believe it had less than that, unless he rode it really easily. I mean, it was literally like a new bike. You can see it in the pictures right there. This is my YZ450. I had a 2015. He claimed it only had 20 hours. I actually hooked it up to the handheld scanner, and it read 34. But it was a good bike. There's my YZ125. I'm showing you like some bits and pieces of it right here. But he said the bike had 9.6 hours on it. It had an hour meter on it. It read 9.6 hours, and it actually looked like 9.6 hours. Original tires, sprockets, chain, no paint missing from the rear rim. There's the original tire right there. Yeah, it was totally 9 hours. I wasn't going to argue with him. It's what it checked out to me to be, and it's been a great bike. There was the hour meter that he had on it, read 9.6. There's my wife's YZ125. When we bought that, it had 3 hours on it. I'm not even kidding. Bought it from a 60-year-old lady that rode it once or twice at Crooms and said it wasn't for her. She wanted to go back to her TTR 125, and there it is parked in the shop next to my YZ 250 that I have today. There's a KX 250 two-stroke I bought 2006 years ago. Bought that from a police officer that bought it brand new. You can see a clutch cover there, nowhere. That bike, I don't know how many hours on it, but I'm going to say like hardly any. There's my YZ 450 2015, another one. And that one, he said it had 11 hours. I hooked it up to the handheld scanner, and that's what it read, was 11 hours. So he was dead on, and that's a good way to get them. Really, is very low hours like that. All right, so the basic checks. It starts up good, starts right up, sounds good. The motor sounds normal. Whatever natural inherent sounds it makes, it is making. Everything's all good. So we know the motor's good for the most part. It's not blowing smoke or anything, unless it's a smoker. If it's a 4-stroke, it's not blowing smoke or anything like that. It has passed the startup and run test. So now we're going to look the bike over and try to figure out how many hours are on it. Well, first we'll ask the guy if there's any hour meters on it. Does he know how many hours are on it, or what is his guess? And then we'll look it over and see if we believe that that's accurate. Well, if it's a very low hour bike, let's say 20 to 25 hours or less, for the most part, I will expect to see probably a stock sprocket on the back. That's a real good indicator of the hours. A good clean stock sprocket in good shape, and a good stock chain that's all stretched out or whatever. Even if the rear sprocket's worn out, a stock sprocket and a stock chain is a good sign of low hours. Also, stock tires. Now, sometimes people change the gear ratio, so you have to keep all this in mind. Sometimes people put a better chain on it right from get-go. Keep that in mind. Some people put their own tires on right away. You got to take all this into consideration. But when I do see OEM tires, OEM sprocket, even if it's worn out, it's an OEM sprocket and chain, that's a good sign to me. I'm going to say, whoa, that's a low-hour bike. It's, you know, it's going to be 20, 25 hours or less. That's good. Rear brake pads. OEM brake pads are not all worn out and kind of dark like these are. If they're not all worn out and they look nice and fresh and bright, that's a good sign. Now, some people ride the crap out of the rear brake, especially beginner riders. They don't know how to ride very well, and that's all they use, a rear brake. So, again, you got to take all this into consideration. Feel the rotor. Does it have a lip right about there where it's been wearing in this spot, but that spot over here is still nice and fat? Look at the axle nut here. You can see this one right here. It's a little dark in color, so this has got a little bit of time on it. When they're like a 10-hour bike, these are going to be bright and shiny, and you're not going to see many marks on it from a tool being put on it. Maybe one time. Maybe I'll leave a witness mark of once or twice that the chain was adjusted. Check these out. Are they all like boogered up and stuff? You're going to look that stuff over. Of course, your basic check. Check the wheel bearing. Come over here down to the chain slider. What we're trying to do right here is figure out how low of a low-hour bike is this. Is this thing all worn out? Is this stock? The roller right here, does it look stock? And is it all worn out? Or let's say it's a 20-hour bike. Is it looking like just 20 hours of wear? The bottom out bumper, when they're brand new, they're nice and bright. They kind of get darker with age. On these two-strokes that have the carburetor vent hoses, these are pretty bright when they're new. And they also get darker and harder with age. They're not as flexible with age. So, you know, that's also another good thing to look at. Do they have OEM pegs on it? If so, that's a really good thing to check to see the wear. Typically on the shifter side is where I pay attention the most to the foot pegs, and they'll wear right here on the front side the most, because when people have their foot like this to upshift. So I'm going to be looking for that wear. If you look at the back side here, you can see how this looks, right? There's no wear right here. But look right over here. You see how this is all rounded off? That's wear from the foot angling down the downshift. So I'm going to look at that and see how much wear is on there. A very low hour bike, these right here are going to look very similar to these right here. A very high hour bike, these are going to get really worn on the front side here, to the point that there'll be just a point back here on the back side. The front sprocket here, has it been removed? I can see this one's been removed because the locking washer right here, has it been removed? Has it been replaced? Or does it look like it has never been touched? The shifter lever, not only am I going to look at the top to see how much wear is on it, you know, assuming they have a stock shifter lever and haven't put some aftermarket one on it, you have to take all this stuff into consideration. A little bit of wear here, but check out down here. Look at that. That's worn nice and smooth and shiny. So you're going to want to feel for that and look for that. Witness marks on the bolts. Can you see where a wrench has been put on? I can see a wrench has been put on these. Yeah, I can totally see. See that? See the marks in there? So someone's had this top end off before. They might not have had the cylinder head off, but you don't have to remove the cylinder head to do a top end on this bike. You can slide it up. Same with the 4-stroke, the cylinder head bolts that you can see. Look for witness marks on them. Look for witness marks all over the bike. You can look at the engine mount bolts and see if the motor's ever been taken out before. Some people, this bolt right here, some people will grease all their bearings when they first buy a bike brand new, and to do that, the swing arm bearings, they will have to remove that. So take that in consideration. However, if you see witness marks on these bolts right here, then you definitely know the motor has been out. If it doesn't have frame guards, look for general frame rail. Frame wear. Also look for wear just on the plastic right here, where the legs and the body rides along the side of the bike. And the usual stuff. Look for fork seal leaks. Check the wheel bearings. Also, come back here and lift up your wheel while it's on the stand and check for up and down play and in the linkage bearings. It should be nice and tight. The spokes, mainly the rear spokes, are they nice and shiny like new? Do they match the front shine pretty well, or are they really dark and black? You can see these are kind of medium right here. But let's go to my YZ250. These are, I don't know if the camera can pick it up. These are pretty dark. These have some usage on them. And these are kind of medium life. Like if we look at the front here, you can see these are still really nice and shiny. The front holder shines for quite a bit longer. And the darker the back is versus the front, you can kind of judge how long this bike's been around. Well, this is an OEM tire right here. I know this bike comes with Bridgestone stock, and it's got some wear on it, so that's, that can happen pretty quickly when you ride hard packed tracks. But I also see it's a little bit on the drier side too, so this tire's been around for just a little bit. But it is an OEM tire, so that's good. I can assume this bike probably doesn't have 100 hours on it. It's going to be a little less than 100 hours, I can assume, because it is an OEM front tire. And I do know some people do replace their tires when they get worn out with another tire of the OEM tire, same brand, make and model, and everything. But this back tire has been changed out before, and they changed it to a Pirelli. So yeah, I'm gonna assume that front tire is stock. They just changed out of back because they wore that out pretty quickly. Over here on this side, oh, we got some wear here, but that doesn't happen overnight. That takes a little bit of time. Let's see here. They have a decal over this, so I can't really see how much wear is on here. But we'll go look at my wife's bike here, and I'll show you. All this. They wear out right here as you ride them. There's her brake lever. All right, let's look at the brake lever on this bike. Let's see. The brake lever's been around just a little bit. Again, looking for general frame wear back here. Since it doesn't have frame guards, we need to look at that. Kickstarter. The Kickstarter, how well is that? You hear that click? This should be a pretty pronounced click. If it starts getting soft and where you don't even feel the click, you can assume that Kickstarter's been around for a while, and it's probably been around on this bike for a while. Check for play. Play is a good way of judging how many hours on the bike. That will definitely help you out. Come on, Beavis. How's the are these dots? They put these little dots on the suspension here. You see that dot right there? There's another one right here and another one right there. Out the factory, them dots are always close to lining up, and you can tell if someone made any suspension changes if the dots aren't close to being lined up anymore, which is fine if they did, but you know, it's something I do definitely take in consideration when I'm just looking at a bike. Does it have stock grips still on it? A really low hour bike will a lot of times still have the stock grips on it. This bike doesn't, but it does have the stock levers and stuff, and that's good. Stock lever here. It just doesn't have stock grips, but that's fine. Handlebars, have they been changed out? Rim clean. These rims, nowadays most of your bikes have some kind of colored rim. Black, blue, whatever. This one has no wear yet on the rim, or very, 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 very little wear. Look at my bike over here. Look at that. I can tell this bike, not only has it been around for a while, it has been ridden hard. That happens either because a bike's been around for a long time, or it's just been ridden hard. If you look at my wife's over here, this one's been around. She don't ride it real hard, but it's been around for a while. So you can see it has a little bit, right? Mine's been around for a while, and it's been ridden hard. It has a lot. You know, only looking at the rear rim here, and this one has like none. Now, on the front rim is where it changes a little bit. The front rim, it takes quite a bit of time to get that rim clean on it. This one has none at all. It's not missing any of its paint. But my YZ250 here is a significant amount. This bike's been ridden hard and for quite a while. My wife's over here, well, it just has some paint missing from changing tires, but there's no wear here. For me on my bikes, I don't see any significant paint missing off the rim here until about 50 hours of me riding it pretty hard. My wife, it takes quite a bit longer, but it takes at least 50 hours for me to see a significant amount of paint missing off the rim. So if you see a ton of paint missing off the rim, you can assume that bike has 50 hours or more. Pretty sure. Of course, another way to lose the paint on your rim pretty quick is to ride around with a flat tire, but that's a whole nother story. Of course, you want to check mainly the rear rim for loose spokes. Now these Yamahas, they typically hold up really well. It's mainly the Cowies, the Hondas, and the KTMs I find the spokes get loose pretty quick if they haven't been staying on top of them. A lot of bikes tend to wear out the front brake cable right here. This one has this little flat spot starting to build on it right here. So that's another good way to judge if a bike has low hours or not. And general appearance of how things kind of age. Like, I'm going to take a second and look up at the forks here for a second. You can see these are pretty nice and shiny and clean. It looks like no one's ever had a tool on these to service them. Now, that could be a good thing or a bad thing. It's a very low hour bike. It could be a good thing. No one's ever been in here. If it's a high hour bike, it means it's never been serviced. But I am noticing these are nice and shiny. And that's always a good sign of you know, fairly low hours. You know, not crazy hours. If we compare it to my YZ250, you can see there's a little bit of clay staining. If I can get the camera to focus in here, you can see there's some clay staining up in here, and if you look closely, you can definitely tell that. Let me get the camera. You can tell a tool's been on here. Yep, yeah, you can see that the tools have been on here before. So these forks have surely been serviced. And down here on the bottom, this ring right here, you can spin the ring. Look for flat spots in it. Get the camera on here. You can see it's starting to wear a little bit right here. That was spun that way from the fork guard sliding up and down on it. We'll go look at my YZ250 here. Let me spin this one around. This thing's been around the block and back. I don't know if they've ever been replaced or not. I can't remember. But yeah, same thing. You got some wear marks right here. I think I have replaced these actually, so I don't expect these to be too bad. But I've seen these, I've seen these worn flat before where it actually starts wearing into the fork tube here. So you're going to want to keep a lookout for that. There's a pretty good wear spot right there. So yeah, that's a good way to help you judge if it's a extremely low hour bike or not. If the seller is willing, it doesn't hurt to take the seat off, or if it's a Yamaha, remove the cover here, or if it's KTM, remove the cover here, and take a look at the air filter. Do they have it well oiled? Is it looking nice and clean? Is it looking fresh, or is it just torn up? And if they let you, remove the air filter and see if dirt has been getting in. Most of your bikes, you'll be able to see dirt stuck in the boot in here if dirt's been allowed to get in there. The Yamahas can be a little difficult to see with the screen, but it still doesn't hurt, because that's one area that I find people, if they're going to fail on maintenance, that's one of the more critical areas that is most often failed, is air filter maintenance. The oil drain bolt, especially on the 4-strokes, I find that they're stripped out more often than 2-strokes for whatever reason. But it doesn't hurt to look underneath the bike, see if it has a stock drain bolt on it, or a stock looking drain bolt. Has it been rethreaded? Ask the owner, how's the drain bolt in this? Has it given you issues? Have you stripped it out? Have you had to rethread it or anything like that? Just check that drain bolt out. You don't want to buy a bike that you always have to put gasket sealer on the drain bolt, or it has a Healy coil in it, or what. You just don't want that. We're about to pull some bikes in here in a few minutes and try to guess the hours, as well as this bike right here. We're going to try to guess the hours. But a few more of my tips before we get to that. Another thing you need to ask them is, does this bike require race feel? If it's not a stock bike, if you see it's not a stock bike, it's had some mods to it, you can just tell it's been messed with. It's real important to ask them, does it require race feel? Some people aren't willing to buy the race feel that it takes. Some people are. I've seen people buy bikes, mainly the 2-strokes, that required race feel because they've had head mods done to them or whatever, and they don't run the race feel and ends up burning up the piston. So if you're not willing to run race feel, it's real critical to ask them, does this bike require race feel? And if you feel the need to test ride the bike, well, there's nothing wrong with that. Be easy when you test ride it. Really, the only thing you're looking for is that the clutch feels good, and then it goes through all its gears properly, and it runs fairly well. Don't go doing wheelies up and down their street. Don't try to show them that you know how to ride. I've sold a lot of bikes, and I've noticed people like to do that. They want to show you they're a good rider and watch me do a wheelie and all. No, don't. Just, you're looking to see that it goes through all of its gears good and it runs good, and that's all you want to do. Another suggestion is, don't be a tire kicker. Don't go up to the bike and first thing you do is start pointing out all the flaws on the bike. Keep in mind, most likely this guy's owned this bike for quite a while, or maybe a little while, and he has some pride in it. This is his, this is his baby. And when you start pointing all the flaws in it, well, you're not making a friend there. He's probably going to be less likely to work with you on the price. Most sellers like to think their bike's going to a good home where the guy is going to, the new owner is going to appreciate the bike and take care of it like he took care of it. So when you start pointing out all the flaws, you're not making any friends, and that's not good. Look the bike over, but kind of keep the stuff to yourself as you're looking it over. Just, don't start saying, oh, look at this. Oh, wow, look good. No, just ask your questions and look it over and keep it to yourself and save all that stuff to the end and negotiating if that comes to be. But don't start like talking down on the bike. If anything, I find I get the best luck when I act excited about the bike and happy about it. I find I can actually lower them in price more at the end during the negotiation stage if I show that I actually like the bike. Then I have found that if I go there and start pointing the flaws, then I can't get them down in the price very much. They go in defensive mode. So avoid keeping them from going in defensive mode by acting like you like the bike if you like it, or at least just show no emotion even. But don't start pointing all the negative stuff out, and don't start pointing at all the stuff that you find wrong with the bike. Keep that to yourself. I have had people come and look at my bike and they start pointing out all the flaws right from get-go, and I'm like, well, this ain't going good. This, yeah, whatever. And as they're pointing out the flaws, I eventually just stop them and I say, hey, hold on, man. It looks like you're looking for a brand new bike. Let me just fill you in here. About 3 miles up the road on Florida Avenue, there's a dealership. They sell brand new bikes, man. You might want to go there. And I tell them that because I don't have no patience for that stuff. When they start pointing out every flaw, I know where that's going, and I just don't like the interaction. And honestly, I am hoping they just go get in their car and go to the dealership, or at least leave here. I just don't even want them around. So you don't want to make your seller feel that way. You want to make them happy that you might be the buyer, because you're going to go home and really appreciate this bike. All right, so you bought the bike. That's your bike. You brought it home. My suggestion is, get rid of the gas in the tank. You don't know how long it's been sitting. You don't even know what kind of gas it is. Get the gas out of the tank. 2-stroke, 4-stroke, it doesn't matter. On 2-stroke, start with your own mixture, your own oil ratio, fresh gas. On the 4-stroke, just get it out of there. Start with fresh 93 if that's what the bike requires. Just don't use their gas. I promise you. I've seen gas sit for just 2 months on 4 strokes, and people go out and ride it, and it cracks the piston. It pings. The octane is dropped from sitting in a plastic tank for 2 months. You don't want that happening on a bike you just bought. And then you're going to blame the seller, and it wasn't really even the seller's fault. He didn't know. He just wasn't riding the bike for 2 months and decided to sell it because he's not riding it. So get the gas out of the tank. Start with fresh gas. And I myself, I typically do a top end right away. I don't even ride the bike the first day. I bring it home and I plan on doing top end before I even ride it. If it's a 2-stroke, I do it mainly to get a Wiseco or a forged piston in there. I don't know what kind of piston they have in it, but I know I want a forged piston. The only way to make sure I have a forged piston is to put one in. It also gives me a chance to check the crank and all that kind of stuff. If it's a 4-stroke and it truly has like 15 hours or less, then and it looks like it was pretty well maintained, I'll probably run that piston its full lifespan. But if the bike looks like it's had over 30 hours or over 40 hours, well, I'm probably just going to do a piston right away before I take it out and ride it. It's just how it is. And it gives you a good chance of checking everything out and also making sure that the piston is good, fresh, and you know the hours on the piston at least at that point. Okay, certificate of origin versus title versus bill of sale. Well, some states they title dirt bikes nowadays. Some states don't. In states that don't title a dirt bike, when you buy the bike brand new, you will receive a certificate of origin. On states where they do title a bike, if you buy it brand new, the dealership is required to take that certificate of origin and mail it to the state, and then the state will send out a title to either the lien holder or the owner or whatever. So not every bike's going to come with the title. Just depends. Here in Florida, they title dirt bikes. However, if the owner is from Georgia, he bought the bike in Georgia, now he's in Florida, he might hand me a certificate of origin when I buy the bike. In my opinion, a certificate of origin is better than a title, and here's why I say this. In my opinion, the true owner of the bike is the person that has the certificate of origin. The state will not issue a title. In states that title dirt bikes, they will not issue a title unless they receive the certificate of origin. Then they issue out a title. Now, when you have a bike that's titled, if you ever went to court because of, let's say you're in major debt to credit card companies or whatever, or divorce or whatever the case is, the courts can take your property sometimes. Well, they're only going to take property on bikes that are titled. They're not going to take your property on a certificate of origin bike because first off, they don't even know you own the bike, but second off, it's not a titled bike and you actually own the bike. Whoever has that certificate of origin is the owner. If the state has it, guess what? They kind of own your bike because they can kind of take it away from you in court if they really wanted to. But if you have that certificate of origin, no one can take that bike away from you. If your bike's ever stolen, certificate of origin, you present that to the police department. And of course, they'll run the VIN to make sure it's never been titled. If it's never been titled before, well, guess what? When they recover that bike, they will call you up and tell you to come get it because you had the certificate of origin. I even had bikes recovered with just a bill of sale before, a handwritten bill of sale, just because the bike has never been titled before. So if the bike's never been titled before, a certificate of origin is great. Even a bill of sale will cut it if the bike's never been titled before. A bill of sale will not get you a title, but it'll help you recover your bike if it did get stolen. You do need a certificate of origin in most states to get a title, though. If you have a certificate of origin for your bike and you live in one of them states that title bikes, my suggestion is just put that certificate of origin in a safe place and don't go title it. Why? You're going to pay fees to have it registered, and you're going to pay taxes. And then when you sell the bike to the next person, now he's going to have to pay all that. I just suggest just keep the certificate of origin. That's my suggestion. But I do understand that in some states you do have to have it titled to ride on their state land, and I get that. I understand that, like California and things like that. If you bought a bike that's broken down because you think, I'm going to get it for a great price because he says it only needs a new piston. He even has a brand new piston already in the gasket. Just says he just never had the time to do it. Come get it. You do the job yourself. You're going to have a great bike at a great price. Again, I bought a lot of bikes with that same story, and in my experience, it's always double what they say it is. If they say it's just a piston, the crank's probably out. If they tell you the crank went out, it's probably going to need a new cylinder head and valves too, and maybe a case. So whatever they say is wrong with it, double that up. That's what it is. I promise you. I think maybe 2 or 3 times it was actually what the seller said it was. And every other time it was a lot more than what the seller said it was. So if you're buying a bike for a bargain because it's not running, understand it's going to take a lot more than they say it does. And when it's time to sell your own bike, be honest. Honesty goes a long ways. No matter what, if you got a stripped out drain bolt, tell them you have a stripped out drain bolt. What comes around goes around. And yeah, just do the right thing. I do. I try to. And that way, when it's time for me to go do stuff, I have that karma on my side. I have that good luck on my side because I've done the right thing. Hey, Beavis. Yeah. So be honest when you sell your own bike. Let's all be honest and make the world a better place. Okay, so now it's time to roll some bikes in here and try to figure out how many hours are on them. Well, you know what? I think I'm going to start with this one right here. I have a few bikes to bring in here. I have a KTM 150, KTM 80, two KTM 85s. I have a few bikes. We're even going to look at my own bikes and try to figure out what they are. So let's start with this one right here. Alrighty, so this bike was just purchased actually and brought to me for a top end. Now the seller said the bike had 30 hours on it. So let's see. Well, first off, this is a 2022 and this is not the anniversary edition, I don't think. No, these are decals right here. That's first observation. Alright, well, let's look at the foot peg here. That foot peg's got some wear right there. Look at the shifter again. We have some wear down here on the bottom side. Alright, right off the top, I'm going to say this is already looking like it's a little bit more than 30 hours. The hoses here, they're getting a little bit dark. They're still nice and soft and pliable, but they have a little bit of color to them, and the bumper's getting a little dark. Of course, I do see witness marks where it's already had a top end done at least one time. It doesn't have a stock sprocket or a stock chain or a stock back tire, but it appears to have a stock front tire. That does show some wear and a little bit of age. I don't see any paint missing off the rim here, so either it is low hours or it's just not been ridden very hard. Rear brakes, let's see. Well, I see a little more wear than I would expect at 30 hours, or they've just they've been hard on their back brake, one or the other. And this is a little darker than I would expect to see at 30 hours. I can tell it's definitely had a tool on it quite a few times. I also see right here they even had it adjusted all the way back here at one time, so they definitely let a chain get pretty worn out on it at one point, or they changed the gear in one or the other. Let's see how many teeth are on it. They got 52 teeth on this rear sprocket. Holy cow, what were they looking to do? Alright, well, we can't see the wear on here, but we can feel the shifter. The shifter has a little bit of left and right wiggle and a little bit of wobble like that too, but it definitely has a pretty distinct click in it, so that's good. See a little more wear right here than I would expect to see at 30 hours. And even the foot peg over here on this side has some wear on it. Again, the forks look nice and shiny, so that's a good sign. So it's not a really high hour bike. I'm just starting to think it's a little more than 30 hours. Again, original front wheel here. Let's see, the spokes don't have quite as much shine as I would expect to see. Stock lever has some play, but the aluminum's looking nice and bright and clean, so that's good. Again, the forks look good, but I do see a flat spot right here. It's worn a nice little flat spot on the front brake cable here. Alright. And of course, it doesn't have OEM grips or anything. Quite a few scratches right here, as you can see. Based on what I'm seeing, I'm going to say this is more than 30 hours. It's not crazy high, but it's more than 30. Interesting enough. I don't know what they did here. Maybe they had a guard in there, drilled some holes in there. But oh yeah, look at that. Look at the wear right there. Well, that's a good sign of some hours too. All right. I'm going to say this is anywhere from 50 hours to 75 hours. That's what I'm going to say. It wasn't the fastest rider, or I would expect to see more wear in the rim here. So probably wasn't a fast rider or ridden too hard, but definitely has some time based on what I'm seeing. I'm going to guess 50 to 75 hours. Could be more, but I'm going to say it's definitely not 30. It's definitely more than 30. let's roll on the next bike and see what we think. A 2022 KTM 85SX. Alright, don't know the hours on this bike at all, but it appears that looks like a stock sprocket to me. That's good news. Yes, it has wear on it, but that's okay. It's a stock sprocket. That's always good. I believe that's a stock chain as well. Yeah, stock chain and sprocket. Very little rim clean or paint missing off of it. There is some, but very little. The bumper looks got a little bit of darkness to it, not much. Same with the hoses here, a little bit of darkness. The foot pegs, let's see. Not much wear, looking pretty good. Shifter, it's looking pretty good. It may have had one top end done to it at some point. I see some witness marks here. Frame wear is looking acceptable. Overall wear is looking. This bike's looking pretty decent. I believe these are stock grips. I believe that's what these come with. Stock. Yeah. And stock levers. So stock grips, stock levers, that's good. This bike's starting to look pretty decently low hour. Although a lot of brake pad wear here, but they appear to be OEM brake pads, just a lot of pad wear. Young kids typically do use a lot of back brake. This bolt doesn't look like it's been overly wrenched on too many times. I mean, I do see some witness marks, but it's looking pretty good. Or nut. Yeah, that looks pretty decent. Stock pipe here. Have some wear here. Clutch cover, just a little bit here. The sticker's still here. Really nice and tight. Yeah, really nice click. Nice tight kickstart lever. That's good. Pegs still look good here. That looks good. Alright. Okay. Not overly worn, just some few mild scratches on that. These have the black front wheel bearings out. That can happen just from pressure washing though. That might not be an indicator of hours. My guess on this bike. Tell me what you think down in the comments real quick. How many hours do you think this KTM 85 is? I'm going to guess this is actually a 30-hour bike. This is a 30-hour bike. Original back sprocket chain. That's, yeah. This is not over 30 hours. It's going to be at 30 hours and maybe a little bit less. I'm going to say over 20 because of the chain and sprocket wear. Over 20, but less than 30. That's where I'm at on this one. Of course, we already checked the 125's compression earlier in the video, but this one, yeah, pretty good compression. Feels good. So, yeah, 20 to 30, probably 30. That's where I'm at. Let me roll on the next one. A 2020 KTM 85. Alright, let's take a look at it. Well, I can tell this has been changed out. That don't look original. Yeah, the chain don't look original either. That front sprocket's definitely not original. That's been changed out. Let's see. Let's look down here. I can definitely see some wear right here. These little grippy things right here are kind of worn out on this side. So we have some wear on the shifter. The pegs don't look overly worn. Yeah, they don't look too bad. I can definitely see more scuffing on the side of the bike here on the guards. I can see some witness marks here. So it's had a top end done. Let's see. Let's look at the rim here. Yeah, it definitely has a decently significant amount of paint missing. Alright, and again, the black spokes, so you really can't judge that. This bumper's pretty dark. Darker than the other one, the 30-hour one we just looked at. And these hoses, they're harder. Yeah, they're harder than the 30-hour one. So this is definitely more hours than the last one we looked at. It's got a nice OEM seat cover. They're slippery, these KTM seat covers, but it is OEM. I don't think these red grips are original grips. They look like original levers though. Yeah, nice original levers. Just the grips aren't original. I don't think they are, at least. I don't think they came in red. Oh, this uses these sliders here. Alright. Well, they're not showing. I see some wear right here, some flat spots. Let's check this side out. A little bit flat spotting there. Not overly worn, not bad. Very little paint missing on the front rim here. Very, very little. Front tire is it's a Maxxis, and rear tire is a Dunlop. Huh. Okay. Pipe, a little dent there, not too bad. A couple little small dents. A little more wear on the cover than the last bike too. How's the shifter? Well, it's kind of gritty feeling, a little bit stuck, dry. Not a lot of play. Oh man, but the whole shaft has play. I don't know if you can see the wiggle there. The whole shaft going into the motor. You can see the hose right here. It's got some darkness to it. Alright. Just based on what I'm seeing, let's feel the compression. Actually has a little bit better compression than the last bike, the other 85 we just looked at, but based on the rear sprocket and chain being changed out, a significant amount of paint missing on the rear rim, and the wear on this shifter lever right here. Well, it's definitely more than 30 hours. Oh, we got a fork seal leak back here too. Pads, they've been replaced. These pads are definitely, see how they're brighter, they're not all dark. These have been replaced. How about the wear on the, oh yeah, this rotor's dug in. So he's a heavy rear brake user, or it's a lot of hours. Look at that. That's been adjusted quite a few times. This bike, to me, tell me what you think in the comments on the second KTM, the 2020. How many hours do you think this one has? I'm going to guess it's definitely over 75 hours. This one's knocking on the door 100, maybe even past 100. But it's on the high end. I'm on the higher end of the under 100 hour range. This is going to be 70. I'm going to say 75 to 125 hours. Yeah, that's where I think this one's at. 75 to 125 hours is where I believe this bike is at. All right, let's roll in the next one. 2019 KTM 150 SX. Now remember how I mentioned that as they get close to 100 hours, they start becoming very difficult to tell how many hours they are, and after 100 hours, you're kind of in no man's land. Well, this is going to be a good example of that. I know the hours of this bike, but I'm going to save that for a minute. Let's look it over and see if we can guess it. So, and another thing is, once they get past 100 hours, I give up on trying to guess the hours. I just say it's over 100 hours. That's all I know, because I'm going to show you later in the video, anywhere from 100 to 300 something hours, you're in no man's land. Who knows? So, let's take a look at it. Well, first thing, I'll start up top here. Not original grips. Has a G2 throttle. Not original levers. Heck, not even original handlebars. Alright. These hoses have been replaced. Obviously, chain and sprockets have been replaced. I can clearly see that. Significant amount of wear on the peg here. You can see how the pointy edge right here on the back side is kind of missing on the front side. It's just rounded out. So a lot of peg wear. Shifter here, ooh, a lot of wear. Look at that. It even wore right into here. Completely worn right here. All the little ribs missing and worn right into there. A lot of shifter wear. All right. Significant amount of paint missing off the rim here. This does have no paint on the spokes, but they don't have a lot of shine left to them at all. Okay. Based on what I'm seeing so far, I'm not even going to look at the brake pads. I can assume these brake pads have definitely been replaced, but I will check the rotor for wear. It's got a decent amount of wear. This has been wrenched on quite a bit. How's the compression feel? Good. Feels good. How about the wear on the shifter? I mean on the kicker. You can see it wiggling there. Alright. How about this way? Oh yeah, a lot of wiggle. Look at this. Can you see that on the camera? Significant amount of wear there. Significant amount of scratches here, all down here. Pipe's been replaced. Lots of wear on the side of the bike. These are kind of rounded out. Okay. I want to keep it off the hour meter there. I don't want to show you the hours yet. These forks have definitely been wrenched on. Look, stickers all kind of... Alright. A lot of wear right here on these. Right here too on this. So this bike's been through its strokes quite a bit. Yeah, front rim wear. The paint right here. This bike's got some time on it. If I had to guess, now again, I know what the hour meter says. Okay, the front spokes are painted, it appears. Just either the back were painted and the paint faded away, or maybe the paint just faded away. Maybe these were black painted spokes and they painted away. Who knows? But anyway, if I had to guess, again, once over 100 hours, I stop guessing. I just say it's over 100 hours. I'm going to say this bike's over 100 hours right here. It is over 100 hours. Could be 100. Could be 300. Could be 150. Let's see what it really is. Oh, yeah. And the comments right down. KTM 150 SX. How many hours do you think this one has on it? I'll tell you right now. 93.1. So it's almost 100 hours. You can see how when they get close to 100 hours, they get really hard to tell. Hey! They get really hard to tell how many hours are on the bike. And this one is pretty much at 100 hours. And as you can see, it looks like it's actually more than 100 hours. It just gets hard. As you get to 100 hours and past it, it becomes impossible. Alright, you gotta go. I'm making a video. Okay, let's roll the next bike in here. It's my 125. Now, disclaimer on this one, I'm like the only guy probably in the world that actually buys OEM grips and uses them. So, and I have two sets of wheels, one for hard pack, one for soft terrain. So keep that in mind. All right, let's look it over and let's guess the hours. Okay, let's start with the foot peg here. Well, I see a significant amount of wear right here on the front side. How about the shifter here? Oh, it's pretty flat right there. It's worn out pretty flat. Okay, this frame guard definitely has a significant amount of wear in it. These hoses actually look pretty decent. Huh. But the bumper has a little bit of darkage to it. Still feels nice and good though. Does not have original sprocket or chain. Okay. I can see some witness marks here. It's had a top end. Well. Of course, you know, check the obvious stuff. You know, wheel bearings, all that kind of swing arm bearings. That, you know, I'm leaving that out. We're trying to figure out the hours here. That's it. All right. It's had a wrench on here quite a few times. You can see that. These brake pads, they're OEM, but they look new. I don't expect these to be original pads based on all the stuff like the shifter wear and stuff. So I'm going to say these have been replaced with OEM pads, which it's my bike, so I know they have. All right. And of course, I know that these grips, it's my bike. Right? OEM levers. Okay, that's good. Significant amount of play on that one, though. Huh. Nice wear right there. Oh, that's getting a little greasy and nasty. I got to clean that up. Yeah. All right, how about the shifter here? Definitely got some wobble there. Let me check the wobble this way. Yeah, it's a little bit of wobble. The click is there, but it's getting a little bit softer. Okay. Let's check the front brake line over here. Oh, this owner, who is me, actually takes the electrical tape and puts a thin layer around the brake line here, and that keeps it from wearing in the brake line. That's genius, whoever owns that. Now, it actually does a pretty good job. Just put one little layer of electric tape all the way down and keeps you from wearing out your front brake line. You'll never have to replace it. Alright, let's check out these things. Whoa, look at that one. That one's got a nice little flat spot on it right there. Let's spin it. Get back up in there. I don't feel any more. Alright, how about this one? Alright, just a little bit of a, yeah, not too bad. Alright, rim wear. I can see a little bit on the front rim here. Again, I got two sets of wheels for this one. I don't know if this is my original wheel or not. The back one definitely has a significant amount of paint missing there. Alright, based on just what I'm seeing. The shifter wear, the foot peg wear, no original sprockets or chains, no original tires, has new rear brake pads, the type of Kickstarter wear. I'm going to guess, actually you put in the comments what you think. My YZ125, how many hours on it? Tell me what you think. I'm going to guess this bike has right at 100. But it's a good 100. Like, someone took care of this bike, which is me. Someone took care of the bike. It's a good 100-hour bike. Let's see how many hours it actually has. Alright, let's go over here. 116 hours. This is a 116-hour bike right here. Well taken care of. 116 hours. Let's roll in the next one. And now my YZ250. Now, sorry I don't have any 4-strokes here right now for this comparison. For some reason, I only have 2-strokes here right now, which is cool. But anyway, it's all the same stuff anyway when you're trying to judge the hours. I mean, you're just looking over the bike. It doesn't matter if it's 2-stroke or 4-stroke. But disclaimer on this bike, again, just like my 125. Now, this one I do not have 2 sets of wheels on, but I do run OEM grips. So we got to kind of take that equation. I'm probably the only guy on earth that buys OEM grips. So, yeah, let's look it over. Foot pegs. Significant amount of wear right here. This thing is rounded off to a freaking point compared to like the back edge here. How about the shifter? Well, the shifter's got a flat spot. It's not that bad, but it's, you know, it's there. It's not as bad as what I would expect to see. A lot worse based on this foot peg here. So I'm gonna assume, and it's nice and shiny too, I'm assuming this has been replaced before, which it has. Obviously, it does not have stock sprockets or chain. How are the hoses here? They're actually not too bad. A little bit hard, but boy, that bumper is pretty dark. That thing's been around for a little while. Frame guards, we don't know when these were put on. They could have been put on later. Actually, I know they were put on later, so yeah. And have some witness marks here, so it's had a top end done to her. A significant amount. Look at that. Significant amount of paint missing on that, and these spokes are pretty darkened. So it's already telling me it's over 100 hours. I can tell you that right now. Pads look pretty thick for the amount of foot peg wear. These pads have been replaced. This nut's pretty dark and it's been wrenched on a lot. How about the wear here? A little bit, not overkill. I'm not a heavy rear brake user. It has a lot of wobble here and like almost zero click. And a lot of wear right here. Okay. Let's see. Of course, like I mentioned, I think there's a flat spot right there. I think I've replaced them before. And same thing, a lot of paint missing on here. Now, as you know, I put electrical tape over this, so we really can't judge by that. But if I was buying this bike and I was looking it over, I would say, based on what I'm seeing right here, I would say it's over 100 hours. And it's not just a little bit over 100 hours. It's at least 150 or more, based on what I'm seeing. Based on the foot peg more than anything else. This is 150 or more. Alright, in the comments, tell me what you think. YZ250 2-stroke, my bike. How many hours you think are on it? And I will tell you right now if my hour meter's still working. It likes to glitch on and off. Yeah, it's off right now. But I can tell you, I looked at it yesterday when it was working. When it was reading. It's 183 hours. Well maintained 183 hours. It's a tight bike. But it's 183 hours. That's what it is. Next bike. Here we go. The wife's YZ125. Tell me what you think my wife's YZ125 has in the comments. Let's take a look at it. Foot peg wear. Pretty worn out over here. Not maybe not as worn out as my YZ250 I just showed you, but definitely has significant wear. But holy cow, that thing is worn flat. Look at that. Woo! Alright, does not have original chain or sprocket. Well, that looks like an original sprocket, but is it? This bike comes with, like I said, you want to know what you're looking at. This bike comes with a 48 to stock. This is a 49, so that is not the original sprocket. The bumper is pretty dark. The hoses are fairly dark and definitely hard. With this marks, it's had a top end done. Has some wear right there. Has this tape covering here. Significant wear right there. Okay, how about the rim wear here? There's definitely some rim wear. Brake pads. They're OEM pads, they look like, and they're definitely midlife. It's pretty dark, and you can tell it's been wrenched on quite a bit. Has some wear in the rear rotor. Has some clutch cover wear. OEM pipe. Has some wear, but it looks decent for the most part. Kicker. A little bit of wiggle. It still has some click, although it's getting soft. Okay, we have some wear right here. Oh, we forgot to be looking at this. A little bit right here, not too bad. The sticker is still there for the most part. All right. How about the front rim here? Well, just some wear where tire changes, but no paint missing off the front rim. And let's check out these collars. A little bit of wear here. I think I might have replaced these. They don't look too bad for the amount of hours that are on this bike. Okay. Oh wow, there's no electrical tape on this one. I need to put some electrical tape on it, but it does have a flat spot right there. Okay. Alright, so how many hours do you think are on this bike? Go ahead and put it down in the description. Let me know what you think with the wife's YZ125. I know how many hours are on it. I'm going to tell you in just a second. But if I didn't know and I had to guess, you know, no OEM grips, does have OEM levers and all that, mainly based on that shifter wear. Holy cow. And well, it's definitely over 100 hours, I'm going to say. Maybe not, it's, you know, maybe an easy 200 hours or a harder, kind of hardish, kind of medium hard 100 hours. But it's over 100 hours, and it's hard to tell. Once they get over 100 hours, it's hard to tell. Is it 100? Is it 300? Well, let's see how many hours are on it. 313 hours. This bike has 313 easy hours. My wife rides it pretty easy. So there you go. Now you can see once they get over 100 hours, you're kind of no man's land. So if you're buying a used bike and you can afford it, the lower the hour, the better, because at least you can be certain that is a low hour bike. Once they're over 100 hours, you don't know. They might tell you it's a 100-hour bike, could be 300. I could literally sell this as, as a 100-hour bike, and I don't think anyone's going to argue, sadly enough. Now, I wouldn't do that, but I'm just saying, you know, so the lower the hour, the lower the hours, the easier it is to be certain that that is pretty much the hours the bike is. And that's why, if you can afford it, get a lower hour used bike. Well, that's pretty much a wrap. I hope this video was of some help. Hope you guys all had a great weekend of riding. I actually rode yesterday's 74 MX. That was a great day. Fun track. Next week I got an FTR race. Hope you guys all had a great weekend of riding. Catch you in the next video.